Hi, I'm Susan Dixon. I'm the program chair for the Chinese Historical Society of Southern California, and I want to welcome you all for joining us and just talk a little bit about the progression of tonight's meeting. So first, we're going to hear from Jessica Chew. Jessica's from Red Bluff, and she kind of became her family historian. And as we know, that's a life's journey. And so at her last program meeting, she had told us about what she had learned, and she has been hard at it and will give us an update of her program. Now, the second part is actually going to be conducted by our president, Eugene Moy, who will do the Q&A. So I hope that as questions arise, you put your questions in the chat. In the meantime, I would like to introduce Jessica Chew.
Well, thank you, Susan. Thanks, Eugene. And I want to say special thanks to the Chinese Historical Society of Southern California for having me again. As you mentioned, I had the opportunity recently to visit our ancestral village. So today I will tell you about our research, kind of discovering the Chu family and the legacy that they leave behind. First, I'm with the Helen and Joe Chu Foundation. Helen and Joe Chu are my grandparents, and I am their only grandchild, really. Our foundation was created in honor of the Chu family's legacy in Red Bluff. I had the opportunity to spend time with my grandfather before he passed away at 99 and a half years old to understand our history. Our goal is to share our loving memories of our historic Chinatown. Some of the projects we've done is naming a street, Historic Chinatown Alley, installing outdoor markers. We've currently have an exhibition in Reading, if anybody's ever in that area. And we've got a book coming out called Images of American Chinese in Tehama County. Some of our other work includes a terracotta monument horse, cemetery landmarks, and student scholarship. So about our work, this is our historic Chinatown alley. It was a 2-block radius at its peak. It was 2,000 people in 1880. This is a lithograph created in 1881. And in 2022, we were able to get the city to approve our street naming of historic Chinatown alley. And we were also able to install a mural of this lithograph. And this is my cousin Bruce pointing out where he grew up in historic Chinatown. So how did we find all this information? Well, our work is really descendant led. We were able to find the majority of descendants from our historic Chinatown alley. Our Chinatown was as a result of being the last steamboat stop during the gold rush. So this town was booming because it was the furthest point north you can go on the river boats, especially if you were looking to mine. So if you're a descendant, reach out to us. If you think you might be a descendant where your family came during the gold rush and may have gone on the last steamboat stop, our work has really led us only because of these descendant stories. So this is a map of my great-grandfather's directory book. And as you can see on the left, these are all the businesses that he was related to. And we are looking for the descendants. So if your family's business is on here or you find our directory, reach out to us. One of the greatest things about our directory is it shows the business name's English name and Chinese name written by my great-grandfather. So rediscovering our journey and understanding my great-grandfather, Chuyu. He arrived in the United States in 1881, which is a year before the Exclusion Act. He arrived with an uncle, which is consistent with the majority of the Chu relatives during that period of time. He was a Methodist missionary. He knew English before he arrived, so he could read and write in English and Chinese by the time he got here. His role in the family business was to be the financial accountant. And one of the books that he had operated was 906 DuPont Street in San Francisco. So on the right, this is the corner of DuPont and Washington Street. And on the left is my great-grandfather. Well, he did the accounting for this location. And in the middle, you can kind of see where this location would have been. Now, almost all of these locations are either a general store or an herbal store. And he came to Los Angeles in 1894 when our family operated the Dun Sao Hong Company. And that was located where the current entrance is of Union Station. And as you can see on the right, you can see the Dun Sao Hong Company, which is the herbal store, and the Chu Yen Company on the right, which is the grocery store. This was consistent with the majority of the Chu family's traditional Chinese medicine practices across the United States. So my great-grandfather did the books for the herbal stores, but he also worked possibly as a cook. And we were able to trace his documents to Pasadena, where he lived there from 1886 until 1903. And he worked for Dr. Dalrymple, and there was a Methodist church next door. Now, this picture is a courtesy of Dr. Dalrymple's great-granddaughter, and in 2023, she and I connected, and I had the opportunity to visit his cemetery and his grave in Pasadena. Now, when Dr. Dalrymple passed away, my great-grandfather was asked to come to Red Bluff, California. And our relative operated the Bodo Hong Company. The Bodo Hong Company was established in 1865. On the left, you see a picture of Dr. Bodo Hong. Now, this picture has been incorrectly used by the Shasta County Historical Society, misinterpreting that this was a Chinese person that was expulsed from their area. But in fact, this picture was used for advertising to non-Chinese patrons. And so in the middle, you can see this same picture was used for the advertising. The advertisement is in English, and it also has testimonies of Caucasian people, attesting to his abilities and his skill of Chinese medicine. Now, by the 1900s, you can see Bodo Hong has changed in his appearance and demeanor. He's no longer needing to wear the traditional clothing for his customers. And in 1899, he sends for his nephew, Dr. Chu Yen. And Dr. Chu Yen operated at the San Francisco location before moving to Red Bluff. At this same time, in 1903, my great-grandfather is asked to come to Red Bluff to operate the books for the Bodo Hong Company. Dr. Chu Yen is the third great uncle to my great-grandfather. So this is what the Bodo Hong Company looked like. It was started in 1865. However, this building right in the middle of our Chinatown was actually there before 1865. He actually just resumed the business and took over from another doctor. So in the red, that's a picture of the interior herbal store. This particular building would stay standing all the way until 1949. And on the right, this is my family's home, and it was the last building to be demolished. And as you can see in the middle is the partnership agreement where you can see my great-grandfather's name. Now, Dr. Bodo Hong dies in 1909, so 6 years after my great-grandfather arrives to Red Bluff. And this is a picture of Dr. Bodo Hong before he passed away. And then in the middle is reported that, a very popular and prominent Chinese doctor had passed away. And Dr. Chu Yen decides to operate the business until 1910, and then he dissolves the Bodo Hong Company in 1915, now recreating the name the Chu Yen Company, which is the same name as the one that was in Los Angeles. Dr. Bodo Hong was buried in China, so we decided that it would be worthwhile to try to find Dr. Bodo Hong's grave in China. Now, the Chu Yen Company, by 1909, when it was built, you can see a picture of it in 1910 on the right. Now, this company was established as the headquarters because by then, not only did Red Bluff have the river boats, but they also had the modes of transportation with the train. So it was a major hub for our relatives and other patrons to come to Red Bluff. And my great grandfather transitioned with the Chu Yen Company. And in 2024, I attempted to buy the Chu Yen Company building. I offered asking price for this building. And as you can see, from when we originally constructed it to how it looks today, it's not that different. You can see the look and feel of how this building was created. And this building was created in 1910 despite the California Alien Land Law, which didn't allow Chinese to own land. Now, as I had mentioned, I was in search of Bodo Hong's grave, so we went to China just a couple months ago. Our objectives were to locate the tomb of Bodo Hong, update the Zipu, also try to locate the Christian chapel built in 1914 by Dr. Chu Yen and the library he built in 1947. And we decided to go with My China Roots, but we also interviewed other companies for our trip. Now, we weren't able to locate Bodo Hong or update the Zipu or locate the chapel or the library. But what we did do was we met with the Chu Association. I visited my family home, and we were able to go to the cemetery. We were able to take pictures of the murals in the town. We also visited several museums, and one of our favorites was the Hong Kong Museum, along with the Toyan Museum. Part of our research was meeting with Sherman Chow at the Chu Association in San Francisco. He helped me identify my uncles on the family genealogy tree and trace what page I was on, so that when I went to China, I was able to let the association know that my grandfather was missing from the Zipu and that I needed to add more descendants to that family tree. And so when we were in China, I had the opportunity to meet with the president of the Chu Association there, thanks to the help of Doug Tu. Now, this is our guide for My China Roots on the left. His research really started when we got there, and we worked with him on all of our notes. And what he discovered was that the scientific community in China happened to write some articles on my Uncle Ken's work. His name was Kenneth Kennel Chu, and he is known as the Oyster King in Seattle. Well, Uncle Ken's work revolutionized the science of aquaculture. So I wasn't super surprised that the scientific community wrote articles on him, but I was very pleased with our researchers' ability to find that. And while his goal was to locate Bodo Hong, he did find articles written about Dr. Chu Yen by his son. And then he also found some cemeteries of relatives that were buried in the graves there. And he was able to confirm that Dr. Chu Yen did use a paper name in 1899 when he immigrated to the United States. Now, this is our village, Fow Shek. And in 2011, my uncle was doing work with the Chinese government, and he had asked if he could see the family village. And so this is him and my Aunt Megan in 2011. And this is a picture of me visiting the village in 2025. So every generation, we've had a family member visit our village. Now, part of my ability to find my home is because the Chinese government has designated our house as a historic landmark. So the front entrance of our home has this plaque on it, which designates our specific house as a landmark. And this is the entrance to our home, and we were fortunate enough to have the Chu Association escort us. Now, the home's pretty dilapidated. On the right, you can see the entrance. You can obviously see that there's a lot of overgrown plants. It was very difficult to walk inside that home. It's huge, but we had a very difficult time getting around. On the left-hand side, they told us that these are called Gold Mountain trunks. These trunks were brought to our village by my great-grandfather, Chu Yu. And then in the middle, you can see a picture of my uncle visiting in 2011. And this is my picture in 2025. So I know that I'm in the right home. And at the top, like a traditional home, it's got a Guanyin blessing. Now, what's interesting is our home has cactuses along the roof. And as I had mentioned, my great grandfather's directory has a wide range of geographic locations with many Chu merchants operating throughout Mexico. So I wasn't surprised to see a lot of cactus in our village. And our village is primarily empty, meaning it does not have residents. One of the greatest accomplishments that we did there was learning Qingming. As I had mentioned, my great-grandfather came to America as a Methodist missionary, and he knew English as a result of that, but he was very religious. And we lost the ability to practice Qingming as a result of that. He didn't practice Qingming at all, so it was something that needed to be learned by us. Because we have about 55 graves of our pioneers in Red Bluff, California, and not all of them were Christian. So I had the opportunity to do Qingming with the Chu Association, and I also found my great uncle, and his name was Chu Lam. So this is me learning how to do Qingming. One of the things that I noticed was they poured alcohol on the tomb, even though that was strictly prohibited during my great-grandfather's generation as a result of Christianity. And in our family, instead of doing Qingming, we would visit the tombs during Christmas. So below that, you can see a picture on the left, which is my great-grandfather and my great uncle that's buried here. We had the opportunity to visit the Toyan Museum, which was quite beautiful. Although nothing was in English, you can see on the right, this is my guide, and on the left, you can see that this museum's fairly new. I really enjoyed this stop because on the outside of the museum, they have rebuilt junk. And this stop is most likely where my Uncle Dick traveled from our village, got on this junk, and went to Hong Kong. And from Hong Kong, he made his way to America. And obviously my granduncle Dick was very excited. So here is a picture we found in our archive where my Uncle Dick is getting ready to go to America, what we foresaw as the land of opportunity. My granduncle took the China Mail steamship. So this is a picture of the postcard that we have from his trip. And on the right, in 1916, this is my granduncle's Dick voyage trunk. And we know that because his name is on the inside of the trunk. There's a registration sticker inside that says this is an authentic trunk. And then it also has the China Mail steamship label on it with his room number and his name. However, when my granduncle came to America, they were detained. My great-grandmother was detained. My granduncle Dick and my granduncle Ned were all detained in Angel Island. And this is a picture of my great-grandmother before she arrived at Angel Island. And on the left is a picture of her after she was released. She was interrogated during her time there. And the reason they were interrogated was because my granduncle Ned couldn't remember where the picture on the wall was placed. And he couldn't remember if the neighbor had a water buffalo or not. Well, the community of Red Bluff had over 22 signatures on a petition validating and attesting that we should come home to Red Bluff. And some of the names on the petition include council members, presidents of banks, the postmaster, all non-Chinese prominent businessmen within the town of Red Bluff. So they really valued our family and they valued our Chinatown. Once my family was released from Angel Island, we all lived at the Chu Yen Company that was built in Red Bluff. And on the right, you see a picture of Dr. Chu Yen with his own kids and also my great-grandfather's children. So my great-grandfather's in the picture, my Auntie Nettie, my Auntie Violet, and our cousins. One of the great discoveries, which we were not anticipating, was we actually found a second tomb of Dr. Chu Yen. His primary tomb is actually in Red Bluff and he was buried in 1947. So on the left is his tomb in Red Bluff. We used this tomb when we were in China to talk to the Chu Association to let the Chu Association know that we were related. And this was the doctor who had built a chapel and a library. And it turned out the Chu Association had recollected that they knew the great grandson of Dr. Chu Yen based on the Zipu, the family genealogy tree. So on the right, we had the opportunity to meet his great grandson, which was a big surprise to us. And he had a striking resemblance to Dr. Chu Yen. So you can see in the picture, this picture is taken in 1929 when Dr. Chu Yen voyaged to our village, and he was actually preparing to stay there. Our whole family was packing up to leave the United States. And so when I had the opportunity to meet his great grandson, I thought he would tell me a lot about our family history, but it ended up being the other way around. And we showed him the first tomb, and then he told us that there was a second one and asked us if we wanted him to show us this tomb. And I was like, absolutely. So we went and we voyaged up the small mountain, and that was a very exhausting trek, but quite a beautiful view. And he showed us the second tomb that he worships every year for Qingming. Now, this tomb had a date, 1929, written on it. And I happen to remember that Dr. Chu Yen and the whole family went to our village in 1929. So we now know that Dr. Chu Yen, despite Chinese tradition, created this tomb for himself and for both of his wives. He had one wife in China and one wife in the United States who he's buried with. And the great-grandson told us that the family story is that he asked for toenail, fingernail, and hair clipping to be sent to our village and buried in this second tomb. So we were very excited to have this revelation. We were quite surprised that he would have a tomb created for himself while he was still alive, despite superstition in our culture. And one way that we were able to do this was because we happened to have this picture of our own headstone in Red Bluff. So one of our call to actions is we hope to find all the descendants of Red Bluff during the time of the gold rush, and we've been able to successfully find many. But this building called the Chu Yen Company, it's the only surviving structure in Red Bluff's Chinatown. This structure was created as the headquarters for the Chu family, and many family members and non-family members of the Chinese community stopped by this particular building. So it's very important to have a call to action to have this building designated and registered as a historic site. This is the only building that's left of our Chinatown. It was built during the Chinese Exclusion Act. It was built during the California Alien Land Law, which prohibited Chinese people from owning property. It was passed down generationally by Dr. Chu Yen's grandchildren, and then it was sold. At the time, I was just a very young little girl. The only thing I knew was that my grandfather was born here, and so were my grandaunts. And as you can see the picture of 2024, not a lot has changed. So we have time to preserve this building as much as possible. Now, to help us save this building, you're free to sign up for our petition. You can donate to our cause. You can write a letter of support to us for the historic landmark designation, and you can follow us on the work that we're doing at Red Bluff Chew. Now, our work is descendant-led stories. So I encourage our audience, it doesn't matter what community you're from, but to go to our website and go to the About page, click Historic Chew Directory. This is my great-grandfather's directory. These notes in here are written by my great-grandfather in English and Chinese. If you find your family's business there, please contact us and work with us on your genealogy research and any research that you might have. We are looking for all of our descendants. Again, a huge benefit is that the Chinese characters are with the business name. You can learn more about the time period because my great grandfather actually passed away kind of young. And that's why we were able to preserve all of his work because my grandfather saved it. We'd love to tell your stories. And, you know, some of our directory has letters. So we might be able to place a letter with your family's company, and we may have pictures because some of the letters contain pictures. We have been able to place a lot of family pictures with the name. And, you'll join the Chu family network. So I want to thank the Chinese Historical Society of Southern California for having me, and I want to open it up to any questions there might be.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I just had to find the right buttons to. Uh, anyway, I only see one comment in the chat, and everyone, please submit your questions because this is how we can communicate. Right now, the first question was really someone spotted why you and wondered why you did not recommend two of the museums on your list.
Oh yeah, that's a great question. One was a village that was converted into a theme park, and that was Chikan. And for us, we were really looking for the history of, our villages and seeing other villages. So that was one that we really didn't have a good experience with just because so much of it has been renovated, if not almost all of it. And then the Suning Railway area, we didn't particularly like that one either. It's very nice, completely remodeled, but there just wasn't a lot there to see in comparison to our experience at the Toyan Museum and the Hong Kong Museum.
And I am looking for other questions. Audience, there are 60 of you out there at least. So you 61 now, I see. But well, while I'm waiting for any questions to come in, I want to just extend my greeting. This is Eugene Moy, and I'd like to thank all of you for joining in on a great May day here. Uh, this is not the first time we've heard Jessica, and we've heard previously some commentary about uh, Bodo Hong and the family and the Red Bluff beginnings. So this journey that you're hearing about today is really about going back to the Fow Shek village and really cracking down. It's something that I have not done yet, and I could probably learn a little bit about how you went about it. But you did get some help from my China roots, which is great. Um, Now, and I assume sounds like you really actually found a descendant in the village, but he didn't seem to know much about the family history. So it seems like maybe there aren't any close connections then. Or is the village, first of all, are they all Chews?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting in the family genealogy tree, there's a generation that marries Wongs, and then there's a whole generation that marries Chins. So my granduncle Dick and all those in his generation married Chins. And during that time you're using a matchmaker to help you make sure that you don't accidentally marry a relative. I know some of the questions that have come up are how long was the journey? There were different types of journeys you could do. Ones that took longer would have stopped in Hawaii, but my granduncle Dick and my great grandfather, they both took the shorter route, which was 30 days from Hong Kong to the United States. And I'm not sure how long the journey on the junk was from the village to Hong Kong.
So in Fow Shek, did you in the ancestral hall, did you find documentation on those who traveled to some of the other far off places, whether to Mexico or Southeast Asia?
No, we didn't. Surprisingly, we didn't. I think because the ancestral hall is kind of new, and we were really looking for the Christian chapel that Dr. Chu Yen built, which we could not find. We couldn't find the chapel that he built, and we couldn't find the library. But what we did find were two roads that he built, and they were just pretty much dirt roads.
What's the population in that village? How many buildings did you see?
Oh, there's 12 districts. That's my understanding is 12 districts. Some of the districts are quite populated, but ours was not. Almost all the buildings, at least on the road where our home was, they were almost all abandoned. There was very few people there. There's some elders that still take care of the village, and there's an elder leader for our district that keeps up after the house. And he helped us learn how to do Qing Ming and find my great uncle.
So, who accompanied you or who guided you to the actual gravestone?
It was a combination of the district leader and the Chu Association. And the Chu Association, they did this very cute little video about our visit, which was really nice.
So, oh, now I'm seeing some questions pop up here. And forgive me, I just had cataract surgery, so I'm trying to read. Um, so, a comment about, uh, uh, let's see, looks like the resolution of the ad for the advertisement, the doctor almost looks like Tom Fu Yun and not necessarily Chu Yun. So, is there a possible change? I guess I don't see this is from Dean. Maybe you could clarify what that ad was about.
Yeah, that ad, there's two ads. There's the ad for the Bodo Hong Company. We're absolutely 100% certain that that's Bodo Hong and Dr. Chu Yen because we have the original of the photo for Dr. Chu Yen, and then the Bodo Hong original is with the neighboring county's historical society. Now, Dr. Chu Yen did go by the name Tu Fuk, Chu Tu Fuk, so there could be a phonetic pronunciation there.
Okay. And well, where so are the originals for these or at least good digital images of these on your website?
No, we don't have those, but we do have them scanned in our archives. And it's interesting because different family members will have different pictures. So I'm not sure how our community was able to afford these pictures, but they had numerous duplicates of it. So I imagine that you had to send an original to the newspaper in order to get these ads running. And our ads went at least to three neighboring counties, from what I can tell during our research.
So you mentioned the multiple villages. Are they all part of the Fow Shek conglomeration, or is Fow Shek itself just one village out of many?
From my great grandfather's records, it feels like it's a big, large network of a community of relatives. So, as people traveled overseas, because it wasn't necessarily just the United States, some went to Burma, some went to Mexico, they stayed in touch with each other and corresponding through letters. And then when my great grandfather died, my uncle Dick also maintained those correspondence. So we were able to kind of connect the relatives through these letters that were retained by our family. And we actually lost a lot of letters. They were tossed out because our family members didn't feel that they could read Chinese. But the ones that were saved, they matched our directory, and some of them contained photos.
So I think you have a compliment from Karen Jane. So very proud of you. Uh, but how long was the journey from the village to the village from Hong Kong? How far away is it? Is it
Now, for
in
us,
Toysan, right?
it was like an hour by car, but they have a brand new bridge. So I don't know how long that journey would have been for that time period. I'm not sure how long Uncle Dick was on the junk because he had to take a junk from our village to Hong Kong and vice versa. And one of the questions I know that's in here is how did the building get designated as a historic landmark? I'm not sure. At some point, the Chinese government decided that that particular district was important enough to be designated as a historic landmark. They did mention its connection to the Ming Dynasty, which is why they wanted to landmark it. But it was something that was already done before my Uncle Dick had arrived. And when my Uncle Dick arrived in 2011, they had to cut the lock on the building, but by the time I had visited, they had a key. So that was really, really lucky for me that I didn't have to buy another lock.
And um, well, let me see here. Maybe you can read some of these questions better than I can, but uh,
Now, I didn't see that the Chinese government was doing anything to upgrade the village. Um, like I said, the building was as dilapidated as when my Uncle Ken had visited, if not a little bit more. Like, for example, we could no longer read the Guanyin characters on the altar anymore. And that has a lot to do with just the lacquer being impacted by the elements, the roof caving in, the second floor caving in. So wouldn't be, it hasn't been maintained, at least from my Uncle Ken's videos and my own site visit. I haven't seen them do much as far as the Chinese government, but they do have the Toyan Museum is brand new. It's absolutely beautiful. It's 3 floors.
and so how much control does the Chinese government have over the buildings and property?
That I don't know. Um, my understanding is one of the neighbors pays for my great grandfather's Qingming every year. And so I think the Chinese government is pretty hands off. They just designated the location and they've done a lot of work for the overseas Chinese community to come and visit. So those museums are really curtailed for the overseas Chinese community to come, and they've got brand new hotels and brand new museums there. So there's a lot of brand new development, but as far as the village, there's not a whole lot of development there. Now, one of the questions is if I had a picture and a map of our village. Because that placard's there, I didn't really need the picture and the map of our village. But during when my grand uncle Ned wanted to get married, and he had to bring his wife through Angel Island, there was a map that was created in one of the correspondence between him and my grand uncle Dick. But I didn't need to use that because that placard is there.
And do you have a picture of the map? I guess you showed that indicating the location of your grandfather's village.
Yeah, and like I said, it's 12 districts. So you have to know your district, your home number, and it helps to have another relative who has visited before because you're like, okay, I know I know I'm at the right place. So yeah, we've had generations visit, and that's been very special. And I just feel honored to be another generation to have visited the home.
So so those 12 villages all have the Fow Shek name. Is that how it works?
Yes. Yeah,
Okay,
there's 12 districts. It's kind of like a neighborhood block if you think about it.
okay. So Fow Shek might be more of a market town than perhaps sort of a
I
central
think it was a
administrative.
fishing village, to be honest. They call it the Village of Floating Stone, is the nickname. And when we were there, there's a lot of fishing irrigation, which is interesting because my uncle Ken became the Oyster King, known as the Oyster King in aquaculture. And there was also a building for rice irrigation that was no longer in use. That was just a couple blocks from our house. And then our home, we also found a second home. So 2 buildings down from my Uncle Dick's house was another home that's in our family's name. And that home was completely gone. And so the community is using it as a garden. But I was quite surprised by the size of these homes compared to the size of the home that our families lived in the United States. And I think for me, on my experience, it was really surreal to experience how little my family had when they were in America versus when they went home to the village. They had just had so much more luxuries of space and food and, and to some degree, a quality of life.
Yeah, obviously there's an exchange rate.
Yeah.
The dollar was worth a lot more over there. A question stateside here in Red Bluff. Can one visit the China Alley or Chinatown Alley? And is there
Yes.
a guided tour that one can take?
Yeah. Actually, if you Google Map Historic Chinatown Alley, Red Bluff will come up. And there is a tour that is promoted by our local hotels. And that tour is available online, but it's self-guided. We're working with the Chinese Historical Society of America to digitize it so that there's a web version of the tour. And we've installed history markers this year. So even if our virtual tour is not ready yet, if you did walk the sidewalks, you would find history markers that we've installed recently to kind of orient you with where you're at in the Chinatown, what it would have looked at, what were the houses that were there, and the different time periods, along with the 5 original families that had settled in the neighborhood.
So those markers are sponsored by the Chu Foundation.
Yeah, they are sponsored by the Helen and Joe Chu Foundation, thanks to donations and a big donation from my Uncle Ken before, as part of, his passing away, unfortunately. And his children were gracious enough to help us with a lot of our projects. And my Uncle Ken, too, transferred the little knowledge that he had about our Chinatown. He drew us pictures and maps and told us stories about the neighbors. And as a result of that, I was able to locate the descendants. And one more thing that should be noted is that this history on the Chu family, it's not solely on my research. Every generation in our family has written down our family history. So my great grandfather, being a financial accountant, he documented everything. He has ledgers, letters, everything. And my grandfather also added to the family history, and he was an accountant also. So the finding your family accountant in your family's business will have a lot of fruit in it because they save everything. And then the next generation to take on the family history was my Uncle Ken. And before my Uncle Ken passed away, he and I sat down to go over the family's history. And the only thing I really needed to do at that point was verify and validate. So my trip to China, a lot of my research was verifying and validating, but there was a lot of research that was written locally I would not have had access to. There was a biography written about Dr. Chu Yen in the family genealogies, Japu. There were articles written about my Uncle Ken's scientific work, and that is stuff that I did not have access to in the United States.
So, sounds like you really had a great visit. Here's a comment from Wei. He noted that in his ancestral home, they have a similar large elevated shrine to Guanyin. Would you know, or did you ask questions? Do a lot of places have that kind of a similar shrine, or was that something that was kind of specially made because of your ancestor?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And it's funny because we're obviously American born, fourth, fifth, sixth generation. And my Uncle Ken had the shrine translated in 2011. And we thought it said God's grace for 1,000 years for the descendants. But when we went there and our guide translated it, it was actually just the customary Guanyin saying. And the altar is very customary in most Chinese American homes, or I'm sorry, most homes in different villages. So it wasn't anything special to our home. most homes will have a second floor with a shrine, and most of them would be in the middle of the home. So you have an entrance, you have a room on the left, which is usually a kitchen, and then it opens up into a larger area like a family room. And those shrines are typically on the second floor. So it was not unique to our home at all.
And another question from Roberta. Would you happen to know in the late 19th century what the population of Fow Shek was?
No, but in the 19th century, Fow Shek was encouraging voyaging abroad. So in our particular village and district, there is murals about the steamboat traveling overseas. So it was heavily encouraged. And my great grandfather and his uncles all traveled overseas. So it seemed like it was more of a family operation and more customary and routine to travel overseas and go to these different countries, establishing merchant stores, whether it was a general store, traditional Chinese medicine. Um, it was a lot of different types of business, but most of them were traditional Chinese medicine. And from my great grandfather's belongings, we found several books of formal education in traditional Chinese medicine. And these are like college level books where it shows you how to operate a business. There's books on anatomy. There's books on, the different herbs and how it functions with the body. So they had some sort of formal education before arriving in the United States.
That last question, by the way, came from Roberta Chew, whose family came from Fow Shek also, but not does not seem to have a connection with Red Bluff, but rather with San Francisco and Yuba City. So she would like to get in touch with you.
Yeah,
So
if you'd like to get
maybe
in touch with
connection.
me, you can go to our website. It's www.redbluffchew.org. And we not only have our family history there, we have our directory of my great grandfather's directory book, which has mostly relatives in it. And you might want to check there. I don't recall anybody in the directory from Yuba City, but we did have a practice in San Francisco and lots of cousins that operated other businesses in San Francisco.
So it's just an amazing legacy. And you're writing a book. When will that come out?
Yeah, we're working with Arcadia Publishing on the Images of America, and we're really trying to push them to get it done this year. But as far as the majority of the book, it's done. It's just with the editors right now.
Will you have a family tree in there?
No, we will not. Our book will focus on the descendants of Tehama County, which are very interesting stories. And the interesting part of these descendant-led stories is that it's all on the maternal side. So these male merchants married a woman, had children with this person, and as a result, the grandchildren, we were able to locate some of them and write their stories and tell their oral histories. So it's a collection of different families in the Chinatown that we once had. And these are descendants from the last steamboat stop during the gold rush. So really amazing pictures are in this book. A lot of effort from different relatives of the Chu family, particularly Dr. Yen's granddaughter, Wei Ling Lui. She was a big, big help for us getting our footing as far as the pictures, organizing them, identifying people, and then finding those descendants. And she's been such a wonderful partner. But the granddaughters have been exceptionally helpful.
This is pretty amazing that you have so much documentation, so many images. I mean, it's just the envy of many of us, for sure. Um, so, and now you're sharing with us that there's a whole other side, the maternal side of the family. So there are more stories to come. So
There
we
are definitely more.
definitely look forward to that. Um, I'm trying to see if I can see any new questions and inquiries. Oh, there was one way back earlier. Uh, this whole presentation is being recorded and will be posted on the Historical Society's YouTube site. So you just go to our website, chssc.org, and you'll find the button that gets you to our YouTube channel. So we would look forward to hearing that. And actually, your presentation was just densely packed with information, and you went really fast for me. So I'm going to definitely go back and listen to it again, because there's definitely a lot of learning that I can take in. So yeah, and there's a lot of you have a few compliments for fantastic research, great presentation. Uh, so what more can we say? But thank you for your work, all your efforts, and since you're really close by in LA now, then we can maybe have you come back and do additional presentations. Thanks to actually all of you for your voices and listening and asking questions, because that's how we learn. That's how we get new insights. So our history is really important to us. We've been around for 50 years, and I hope that we're going to be around for another 50. So I thank you all for joining in tonight and listening to a very, very valuable content-filled presentation. But also, hopefully, it left you thirsting for more. So very much. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Thank you, everyone, for being with us. Some of you who have been nearly 50 years also. So have a great evening, and we'll see you again real soon. Thank you.